Hi. Well, it looks like the hottest movie of the new year so far has been brought to us by that old standby, Clint Eastwood. Any Which Way You Can, which Eastwood directed and stars in, has been packing them in, and I thought it might be a good idea to take a look at why this movie has its appeal. Now, I have to admit it was one of the last of the movies released shortly before Christmas that I made it to. I kept seeing previews for it, and it looked like it would be really dumb. I mean, there's this ape and 90-year-old Ruth Gordon talking dirty and a bunch of guys on motorcycles, and Eastwood getting that famous wooden face pounded in a bare-knuckle boxing match. On the other hand, I had liked his Bronco Billy a whole lot. That came out last summer and kind of strayed away from the usual Eastwood pattern, so much that a lot of his regular fans stayed away. It turned out that I liked Any Which Way You Can better than I thought I would, even though I didn't like it as much as Bronco Billy. It seems that all of the Eastwood movies these days have a certain appealing weirdness to them. In Any Which Way You Can, for instance, there's an orangutan named Clyde. Now, I know a lot of movies have animals in them, but in this movie, nobody seems to notice that Clyde's an animal. I mean, he sits in this country and western bar and drinks beer, and nobody says anything about it much. He works in Eastwood's junkyard just like any employee. He even winds up in bed with a girlfriend stolen from the local zoo. Then there's the motorcycle gang. It's a cartoon gang, really. The leader says to his pack, "Are we not bad mothers?" And the pack answers back in unison, "Yes, we are bad mothers." Okay, and then there's Eastwood himself, of course. In Bronco Billy and in this movie, Eastwood sort of spoofs his usual macho character. Of course, a man's got to do what a man's got to do, and in this movie he has to beat up on enough people to keep his fans happy. The usual Eastwood stone face serves him well as usual. Back in the 60s in the spaghetti westerns that first made him famous, it gave him a cool distance that allowed the basic aesthetics of the western genre to shine through. In the Dirty Harry movies, his lack of emotion allowed him to become a kind of avenging angel on crime-ridden big city streets. Dangerously so, I think. Nowadays, Eastwood uses that lack of expression to mouth some really naive, down-home values in such a low-key, straightforward way that I think a lot of people who might ordinarily be embarrassed by that sort of thing accept it here. Ever since the outlaw Josie Wales, an Eastwood movie a few years back, he surrounded himself in his movies with a ragtag collection of misfits, and this movie's no exception. I think that appeals to people. And as usual, one member of the group is the blonde Sandra Locke, who apparently is a hit with Eastwood off the screen as well. The plot is pretty dull. It has to do with how Eastwood doesn't really want to participate in this big bare-knuckle match, and how the mob wants him to and tries to make him because there's a lot of money involved. And, well, whenever the movie strays away from its fascinating little bits of weirdness and drifts back to the story, it starts to drag. And in any case, it's not a great movie. It doesn't have the flashes of brilliance that Bronco Billy had. On the other hand, it's a pleasant diversion. Okay, and now, as I say, a word from our sponsors.